Hi there, and welcome to another exciting session of training provided by Quicksoft. In this chapter, we are going to cover an interesting topic called transaction type. Transaction types in receivable module has a very crucial role to play. This can serve as a invoice categorization because you can group invoices by certain transaction type which you have created. But at transaction type level, in a transaction type master, there are lot of useful information which is defined, which affects your whole invoice processing as such. Okay, so we'll understand all those when I explain you all this. So this is a very useful chapter for receivable, and you should define your transaction type as per your business need. And very important aspect of transaction type is you can define your invoice document numbering at transaction type level. Yeah, so that means if I have multiple transaction type, I can, for all transaction type, I can have one sequence number, or actually I can have, for each transaction type, I can have separate document sequence numbering if required. Okay, so that plays a very crucial role in the system configuration. Okay, so let's start. So transaction type, when you define transaction type, you have to specify transaction type set. This is typical, as you would have already become familiar with this one now. When you define any master, whether this is for applicable to common set or specific to BU set, so you can specify whether it is applicable to all and or applicable to specific business unit. Legal entity, if you want to make a transaction type applicable only for a particular legal entity, you can specify that. Otherwise, it will be applicable to all. Give a name to your transaction type. The size of this field is 22 characters only, so you have to see how do you fit the name of transaction type within that 22 characters. Yeah, but you can give a description longer than transaction type name, so that you can use it for any other reporting purposes, but you have to make sure name is 22 characters only. Yeah, I've shown some color coding here, so all the color coding is, which is red, means once you save and this is transaction type is used, you cannot change this field anymore. Yeah, transaction class, whether it's an invoice, debit memo, credit memo, chargeback, or bills receivable. Yeah, this is basically further grouping of transaction types. Whether you may have, let's say for invoicing, I have 10 different transaction types. Yeah, so then I can say this transaction class for those transaction types is invoice, and for debit memo, credit memo, I can specify transaction class. Transaction status, yeah, when you create this transaction, by what will be status of transaction by default: open, pending, void, or close. For all the transaction which you create, status should always be open. Yeah, but sometimes when you migrate transaction from some external system, you just want to record those transaction in your system, you can set the status as close or pending as required. Some people use transaction status also useful for because receivable module lacks one important functionality, which is approval. It doesn't have the approval functionality. Yeah, so how do you implement approval? Some people do it, the way they do is they create two transaction type. One transaction, the status will be pending, so which the requester can create. When the approver comes and reviews transaction and he finds okay, he changes the transaction type, which will have a status of open. Yeah, so this is how they control it. Void is something, if you want to if your deletion is not available, how do you cancel? You set the status of transaction to void. Yeah, close is if you want to use for importing transaction from external system. Just record that in your receivable system, you can bring it as closed, so that there's no processing happens on those transactions. From date, invoice date must be from this date onwards. So if I give 1st April, that means I can create invoices only from 1st April onwards. So generally this is given as a historic date. Yeah, typically if you look at Oracle setup, it's called 1151. Yes, so that any historic invoice, if you want to migrate, you should do it after this date. So basically, if you want to not use this transaction type in future anymore, you can put the end date. Creation sign, this is very important. Yeah, this also uh, serves as a control purpose. Now what does it mean? So positive, negative, or any sign. Yeah, positive means if I set the creation sign over a transaction type as positive, I say it should be positive, that means the end balance of my transaction should be positive. Yeah, what does it mean? Let's say if I'm creating an invoice, yeah, in my distribution I can give multiple line plus minus. Yeah, but net result of my net invoice amount must be positive. That's what invoice is, right? Otherwise it becomes a credit memo. Yeah, when I create credit note, I can say set the net, my net credit note amount, final amount should be negative. Yeah, any sign means positive or negative, we don't care. Now the question comes, why should we use any sign? Because either invoice should be positive or negative. So this is again a facility which is available. If you don't care, it doesn't matter to you whether invoice is positive or negative. Same transaction type you want to use it for invoice or credit memo sort of operation. You can create it in, if you create an invoice with net amount as negative, it actually becomes a credit memo. Yeah, so you can set that. But when we use intercompany related transaction type which are used in intercompany general ledger intercompany process, it only picks up transaction type which are of any sign. It does not pick positive or negative signs. Yeah, so you have to be careful if you are going to use intercompany transaction process in GL. As I've shown in my GL videos, this sign should be any sign. Generate bill, if you're going to print invoice, you choose the generate bill option. If you choose a credit memo against this transaction type, let's say this is an invoice transaction type and you create a credit memo against this transaction type, what should be the credit memo type name? Credit memo, we also create transaction type for credit memo. System creates a credit memo. It also needs a type of transaction type for credit memo as well. So this will be used for defaulting. Application rule set. So default application rules for receipt application. As we have given at system option level, now we are giving a transaction type level. Yeah, so this system sets a precedence accordingly depending upon. Yeah, system option is the last precedence. So it most important is the customer site level, which we'll be setting it later. Payment terms, default payment term when creating invoices transaction type. So this is again default. Yeah, it's not going to force anything. Yeah, it's only for defaulting purposes. Open receivable. Yeah, so basically you should set open receivable for almost every transaction type which you create, except for transaction type where your transaction type status is void. Yeah, void is just creating a transaction which is sort of cancelled, so which does not go to receivable. Open receivable means when you create an invoice, it's going to update your customer balances, and this will also be interfaced to your GL when you post to GL later. Allow freight. Do you allow freight to be entered for this transaction type? If yes, you tick this one. If you don't tick, then you will not be able to choose freight line type of freight when entering invoices. Post to GL. Yeah. So you should set always configure this yes. If you are say open receivable, this should also be yes. Only in the case of void type transaction type, you don't check this box. Otherwise, it should be yes. Allow adjustment posting. Yeah, so when you define some transaction type which you don't which for which basically you don't want distribution to be posted to GL. Yeah, let's say I give example earlier that if you're migrating invoices from external system just to bring in here, and but you don't want any accounting impact to go to GL, because you could be pushing directly some information to GL as a separate journal. But if any adjustment done in that against those invoices directly in receivable, you want to push those to GL. Yeah, in that case, you set allow adjustment posting to yes for that scenario. Yeah, typically when you say post to GL yes. Yeah, then the allow adjustment posting is also by default set to yes. You don't have to choose that. But in case if you choose this no, you can only set yes for this one. So just post adjustment general entries to GL. Yeah, default tax classification code. Yeah, if you define tax, if you're going to use tax in your receivable, then you can say default tax classification code for your specific transaction type. But again, this is for default. At invoice level you can change it, and if you define taxation with rules, that will change it automatically anyway. Yeah, natural application only. Natural application means, let's in this like in this example, if invoice has a balance due of 400, you can make application against the invoice only up to 400. Yeah, so you cannot apply more than the invoice balance. Allow over application. Yeah, this is generally not used process, but this is a feature available. Maybe in some geography somebody uses this. Over application lets you apply more than a balance due on a transaction. For example, if you have apply more than a balance due on a transaction, for example, if you have apply 500 receipt to a 400 invoice. Yeah, this overapply applies the invoice by 100 and reverses the balance sign for positive to negative. Yeah, so basically invoice uh, becomes a credit note in a way. Yeah, so the only benefit I can look at this one is that it closes your receipt. Otherwise in your receipt you'll have 100 unapplied, but in this case it closes your receipt and in a way creates a credit note to customer which you can apply against the future invoices. Yeah, so whether you want to keep a receipt unapplied or you want to keep a credit note unapplied, this is a decision you have to take. Exclude from late charge calculation. Whether you want to exclude this particular transaction type from late charge calculation. Uh, if you enable late charge calculation, so that it will look at all the transaction type which you have. But if you tick this box, then this particular transaction type will not be included in your late charge calculation. Future dates with chronological document sequencing. If you're going to use document sequences and also enforce chronological document sequences, that means chronological means if invoice number 25 is on 10th April, invoice number 26 has to be 10th April or next date, cannot be in the previous date. Yeah, and if you do this one, then it will not let you choose the future date also. For example, if you have put 25th April for then for the next invoice date, then the chances are you miss the document sequencing. Typically, when you create an invoice is always created as on current date. Yeah, but in this case, if you want to use the functionality to enter invoice on a future date, then you don't take this option. But otherwise, uh, leave this option if you so that it does not restrict you. Reference account. At each transaction type, I can create one transaction type, and if you're using common set, that transaction type can be used by many business units. Yeah, because the parameters, if you look at all the field which I explained to you, are not business unit specific. Yeah, so I can define account code which are like revenue, receivable, tax. All these are account code which are used in invoice level. I can define all these accounts at transaction type level, and when I in auto counting, I can specify. Auto counting is a process at invoice level which can automatically create your distribution accounts, which you'll be learning later. I can specify which segment of certain account to be picked from which level, to at customer site level, at transaction type level, or invoice level. I can specify various level which you will learn when it reach that stage. So you can specify it. Yeah, you have to be again the point to you have to carefully analyze is if you can this transaction type be used by many uh, business units. Yeah, that's something you have to consider, because as I mentioned earlier, you can also specify document sequencing at transaction type level. Yeah, so you have to consider all these factors to decide whether you create business unit specific transaction type or you create generic transaction type to be used. Yeah, but you can always, even if you use generic, you can always specify these accounts by business unit for auto counting to default as per the business unit requirement. So these are some of the important setup which I wanted to share with you. Now let me show you how to create a transaction type in the system. To define transaction type, under financial, search for transaction type, then go to manage transaction types. You can search for all existing transaction type which are defined here. These are CD transaction type which are available. You want to use those, you can, or you can define your own custom transaction types. In this case, we're going to define a custom transaction type. I'll choose common set. This is not legal entity specific. I'll say QS sales invoice. Yeah, my description will be same. Transaction class is an invoice. Transaction status will be open. From date, I'm starting from the date when I started my ledger. Creation sign, I want positive sign. Generate bill, I want to say yes. Create memo type, I have not defined, I'll set it later. Application rule, I'm saying prorate all. Payment terms, I can set 13. And this is again for defaulting purpose, but again, what you define at customer site level, that gets the maximum precedence. Open receivable, because I want to interface to receivables or to GL. I want to open receivable to the open receivables. Freight, I can set it yes. For post to GL, I want this to be posted to GL. Allow, see, once I post to GL, allow adjustment posting by default is checked and I cannot change it. If I remove this one, I can choose yes or no here. Yeah, as explained you in my presentation earlier, I'm choosing post to GL, so this is by default ticked. Default text classification code, if you want to use that, you can specify. Otherwise you can leave it blank. Yeah, so natural application only. I want to have only natural application. If you don't want natural, then you can choose to have an over application if you want to. But typically, what's used is always natural application. Exclude from late application calculation. No, I want to it to be included, so I will not take this one. I don't want to put any restriction on future dates, so I will leave it blank. Now, this after entering this much information, you can save it. Your transaction type is saved. your transaction type is saved. Yeah, I also want to give some reference accounts so I can use it in my auto accounting later. So I will go to my create section. I'll say I want to do for my Singapore business unit. Sometime when you come to this screen to enter a business unit, let's say my business start with SG, it doesn't search that. Yeah, so you'll face this error. So what you should do, you should go and search here SG. Still if it doesn't show, then you go to advanced and then say it does not equal, just put some number. Now it will show you all the business units which are available. Yeah, so this is a, I don't know why it doesn't search automatically initially, but this is the way if you face the same issue, this is the way to overcome that. Yeah, now these are account, revenue receivable account. These are what I've given at system option level are getting defaulted in transaction type. Revenue account is used for invoicing with rules. You will learn it later when I define this one. Unearned revenue account and unbilled revenue, unbilled receivable are basically used when we do invoicing with rules. Yeah, we will have this transaction type first for normal invoicing. When you want to do invoicing with rules, we'll specify this account and I'll explain to you. Auto invoice clearing account is used when you are importing invoices through auto invoice and you have to give quantity, selling price and the revenue amount. If your quantity times selling price is not equal to revenue amount which you are given, then system books are different into the auto invoice clearing account, so you can handle identify the issue and fix it later. Okay, so at this stage we're just talking about basic setup. So we set up revenue receivable tax and freight account and saving it. If you have more business unit who can use the same one, you can create revenue these accounts for those business unit as well. Okay, so once you're done, you can save and close. Okay, so this was invoice. Let me create one more debit memo as well and create memo. So I'm going to create again for common set. I'm going to QS debit memo. I will save the same here. Transaction class is debit memo. Transaction status is open. Starting is state. Size debit memo is very much like invoice. Yeah, so start. I want to print it. This I will define later. For it all, payment terms 30 net. Everything else is standard. Yeah, and then I also want to give my entity. I can save it. I will go to my SG space QS. Cannot find again. I'll still go and pick it from here. Yeah, then I say okay, because this is same for my debit note. And then I save and close. I can create another one. This time I'm going to create a credit memo. QS credit memo, and I'm creating this transaction class which is credit memo. My status is open. Start date is generate bill. Okay, I want to print it. It's equal to print bill, and then I can say application rule sets, put it all. Yeah, then rest is fine. I can save it, and then I can also give my business unit. Accounts are fine. I save and close. Now I will go back to my other transaction which I created earlier. I search all starting with QS. I go to my sales invoice. And this time I choose my credit memo type starting with QS. So when I create any credit memo against this transaction type, this will be default credit memo type. Yeah, same I do for my debit memo. Yeah, so this completes your definition of transaction type in this chapter. You have learned how to define transaction types in the system. Transaction type, as I mentioned earlier, are basically for categorization purpose of your invoicing, and also it has a lot of other option whether you want to post it to GL or not, what kind of application should be done on the receipts, natural application, over application, and a variety of other fields which you have understood, which you can define at transaction type level. And also very importantly, we can give account code details which will be used later for auto counting purposes. Yeah, so this is very useful setup and can also be used for your fencing which you need to define for for your unique documenting. Yeah. Okay. So with this, we conclude the chapter. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and happy